Nobody expected the San Antonio Spurs to be this close to winning a championship this fast. Just one season after looking like a team still trying to figure everything out, they stunned the entire NBA by winning 62 games, tearing through the Western Conference and knocking off the Blazers, the Timberwolves, and the defending champion Thunder to reach the NBA Finals. But when the biggest stage arrived, one hidden weakness was impossible to ignore. Every time Victor Wembanyama went to the bench, everything changed. The defense lost its bite, the energy disappeared, and the Knicks took advantage of every single minute he was off the floor. The Spurs didn't come up short because they lacked talent. They came up short because they had one glaring weakness that nobody could hide anymore. That heartbreaking finals loss changed everything. The 2026 NBA Draft wasn't just another draft night for San Antonio. It became their chance to fix the exact problem that kept them from bringing home a championship. By the end of the night, the Spurs had added 4 new players, and 2 of them have the potential to completely reshape this team's future alongside Victor Wembanyama.
We were excited tonight to get a couple guys that we think can really help our team now and also into the future. As you can see, we had a type. We added a couple of big bodies, physical, athletic, different profiles, a little bit, one being younger, with, a huge upside, and obviously one being, a little bit older, we've seen develop. We also think with really good upside. So we're excited to add both young men to the program and continue to build from here.
But the draft may have been just the beginning. Around the league, people are already talking about the Spurs making even more moves. San Antonio could still shake up its starting backcourt, add a proven veteran forward to strengthen the rotation around Wembanyama, and even brought in an experienced assistant coach to give Mitch Johnson another trusted voice on the bench. Suddenly, this entire offseason looks much bigger than anyone expected, and if even half of those moves pay off, don't expect this Spurs team to look anything like the one that walked off the floor after the finals. This roster could be faster, deeper, tougher, and finally built to fix the exact weakness that cost them a championship. So just how much has one offseason changed the future of San Antonio? Last season was a massive success, but the New York Knicks exposed the one weakness every contender had been searching for. It wasn't talent, it wasn't coaching, it was depth, especially in the front court. The Spurs built one of the NBA's most dangerous defenses around Victor Wembanyama, whose size, timing, and rim protection completely changed games. The problem showed up every single time he needed a rest. Once Wembanyama headed to the bench, the defense lost its identity. Getting stops became much harder, and Mitch Johnson had no choice but to keep leaning on his superstar for huge minutes. As the finals went on, that heavy workload started catching up to him. By the fourth quarter, Wembanyama looked worn down at times, and the Knicks kept dragging him away from the basket, opening driving lanes and creating easy scoring chances. After that series, the message couldn't have been any clearer. San Antonio needed more size, more athleticism, more players who could protect the paint without everything falling apart the moment Wembanyama sat down. That made the 2026 NBA Draft one of the biggest nights of the Spurs' entire offseason. Using the 20th overall pick and later trading for Denver's 26th selection, the Spurs added 2 defensive-minded big men with one clear mission: make sure what happened in the finals never happens again. And this is where things get really interesting. Most finals teams don't usually find elite talent this late in the draft, but San Antonio may have pulled off exactly that. Jaden Quintance was selected outside the lottery, but plenty of scouts and NBA evaluators believed he had the talent to be a top 10 prospect in the entire draft class.
What's good, Spurs Nation? My name is Jaden Quaintance. I just got out to San Antonio, and I'm excited to work with y'all. Go Spurs, go.
If he develops the way many people expect, this could end up being one of the biggest steals of the entire draft. At only 18 years old, Quintance already looks like he was built for the NBA. Standing 6 feet 10, weighing 253 pounds, and owning an incredible 9'1" standing reach, he already has the kind of physical tools that front offices dream about before a player even steps onto an NBA court. But his size is only part of what makes him so exciting. What really has scouts paying attention is the way he completely changes games on the defensive end. As a freshman, Quintance averaged 2.6 blocks and 1.1 steals per game, while posting an unbelievable 9.8% block rate. For comparison, Victor Wembanyama finished last NBA season with a 9.4% block rate. That doesn't mean Quintance is the next Wembanyama, but it shows just how disruptive he already is. He has the quick feet to stay in front of smaller players, the instincts to rotate as a help defender, and the explosiveness to erase shots at the rim or blow up pick-and-roll plays before they even get started. That's exactly why the fit in San Antonio is so exciting. The Spurs desperately needed another dependable big man behind Wembanyama, and Quintance gives them someone who can eventually handle those backup minutes while also creating the option of playing next to Wemby in certain matchups. He's also relentless on the glass, especially offensively, averaging 3 offensive rebounds per game at Arizona State thanks to his length, timing, and non-stop motor. Offensively, though, there's still plenty of work to do. Right now, Quintance isn't a player who creates a lot of offense for himself. He shot just 18% from 3 and 47.9% from the free throw line as a freshman. The good news is that scouts don't believe his shooting mechanics are broken. The production simply hasn't caught up yet. Thankfully, San Antonio doesn't need him to become a scorer overnight. With De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Victor Wembanyama, and eventually Dylan Harper leading the offense, the Spurs mainly need Quintance to defend, rebound, protect the rim, and bring non-stop energy every time he checks into the game. Those are already the exact strengths that made him such a highly intriguing prospect. So if his upside is this obvious, why was he still sitting there with the 20th pick? The answer is simple: injuries. In February 2025, Quintance suffered a torn ACL and meniscus that ended his season. Although he later returned to the court, the recovery limited him to only 4 games during his sophomore season at Kentucky. That left plenty of NBA teams with more questions than answers, allowing a player many evaluators viewed as a top 10 talent to unexpectedly slide down the draft board. The Spurs wasted no time taking advantage of that opportunity. For San Antonio, this was never just about next season. This was an investment in a player with enormous long-term potential. Right now, the biggest priority is getting healthy. Quintance has already shared that he expects another knee procedure followed by roughly 6 months of recovery, meaning there's a realistic chance Spurs fans may not see him on the court until well into the 2026-27 season. That's exactly why San Antonio refused to stop after making just 1 draft pick. Knowing Quintance could miss most of next season, the Spurs wanted another front-court player who could help right away. They traded up to the 26th pick and selected Tarris Reed Jr. At 6'11", 263 pounds. With an incredible 9'2" standing reach, he brings the size, toughness, and physical presence San Antonio was clearly missing during the NBA Finals. Quintance is the long-term investment. Terrace Reed has a real chance to make an impact from day one. During his final season at UConn, he played a huge role in the Huskies' run, averaging 14.7 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game while battling some of the toughest competition in college basketball.
He comes from a very great program, playing for Coach Hurley. We had a little luck there, taking somebody from that program once before. And so we felt very comfortable that if needed, he can come in and provide some help.
That's exactly the kind of production the Spurs hope carries over to the NBA immediately. What makes this pick even more exciting is how perfectly Reed fits what San Antonio was missing. He's an elite rebounder who averaged 3.2 offensive rebounds per game, constantly creating second-chance opportunities with his strength, positioning, and relentless hustle. That's exactly the type of physical presence that does his damage where it matters most, around the rim. Last season, he shot an outstanding 64% from the field by finishing through contact and overpowering defenders in the paint. On the defensive end, he averaged 2 blocks per game while holding opponents to only 56.2% shooting at the rim. He's at his best protecting the paint, but he's also mobile enough to avoid becoming an easy target when teams try to pull him out onto the perimeter. That's exactly why this selection could turn into an even bigger steal than many people realize. If Quintance develops into the long-term answer, Reed still projects as a valuable rotation player. And if Quintance's recovery takes longer than expected, Reed is ready to step in immediately and help solve the exact problem that cost San Antonio a championship. Either way, the Spurs already had one of the NBA's strongest defensive foundations, and in one draft they added even more size, rim protection, rebounding, and toughness behind Victor Wembanyama. But fixing the front court was only part of the story. The much bigger question now surrounds a player who's already wearing a Spurs jersey, De'Aaron Fox. Quietly, his future has become one of the biggest talking points of the entire offseason, and surprisingly, it has very little to do with how he played during the regular season. For most of the year, Fox was exactly what San Antonio hoped he would be. In his first full season with the Spurs, he stabilized the offense, created scoring opportunities alongside Wembanyama, and played a huge role in helping the team finish near the top of the Western Conference. Then the playoffs arrived, and everything changed after Game 4 of the second round. After suffering an ankle injury against Minnesota, Fox simply wasn't the same player. Before getting hurt, he was averaging nearly 19 points per game during the playoffs. After the injury, his production dropped sharply, and by the NBA Finals, he was averaging only 12.8 points per game. Then came the moment Spurs fans still haven't forgotten, trying to attack the basket late instead of letting the clock run. Fox was denied by a huge OG Anunoby block that helped complete one of the most dramatic playoff comebacks in recent memory. For many fans, that one play became the defining image of De'Aaron Fox's postseason. But the real story goes far beyond a single possession. Beginning next season, Fox's 4-year, $229 million maximum extension officially kicks in, with Victor Wembanyama expected to become eligible for a supermax extension in the near future. That's an enormous financial commitment for a franchise determined to build a championship team. At the same time, San Antonio's young backcourt keeps getting stronger. Dylan Harper made an immediate impression while Stephon Castle continued taking major steps forward. As both players keep developing, one question becomes harder and harder to ignore. What does the Spurs' long-term backcourt actually look like? If Harper and Castle are truly viewed as cornerstone pieces alongside Wembanyama, then Fox's long-term future suddenly becomes much more complicated than it seemed just a year ago. Even with those questions, the Spurs aren't showing any signs of giving up on him. After the finals, general manager Brian Wright publicly defended Fox, pointing directly to the ankle injury while praising the way he continued battling through the pain. Wright said, "Obviously the injury is a real thing, but we have the ultimate faith in De'Aaron and who he is as a player, what he's been for us, and what he means to this team." That's a strong vote of confidence, but it's still fair to wonder how long this roster can stay exactly the way it is. If Harper and Castle continue improving, there could eventually come a point where all three guards simply can't have the same responsibilities. Sooner or later, someone inside the organization may have to make an extremely difficult decision. Even so, Fox still brings something the younger guards haven't fully proven yet. Harper and Castle both made huge strides last season, but neither consistently looked ready to run an NBA offense on their own. Fox provided stability every single night. He organized the offense, put teammates in the right spots, slowed the game down whenever things got hectic, and remains the most proven perimeter shooter of the three guards. Those are qualities that still carry massive value for a team with championship ambitions. That's one of the biggest reasons San Antonio appears willing to stay patient, at least for now. But whether Fox remains part of the future or eventually becomes involved in another blockbuster move, the bigger picture is impossible to ignore. Just 2 years ago, the Spurs were simply collecting young talent and hoping it would all come together someday. Now they're debating which proven star fits best alongside a championship-caliber core. That's a completely different conversation, and it's exactly the kind every rebuilding franchise dreams of having. And even if the Spurs never make another major move involving Fox this summer, they still had one more important need to address, and they wasted no time. Doing it, San Antonio signed Tobias Harris to a 2-year, $31 million contract using the mid-level exception. It may not have generated the biggest headlines across social media, but this could quietly become one of the smartest signings of the entire offseason. The reason is simple. Throughout the playoffs, San Antonio repeatedly struggled with floor spacing. Wembanyama, Fox, Castle, and Harper combined to shoot just 33% from three, allowing opposing defenses to pack the paint, clog driving lanes, and dare the Spurs to beat them from the outside. The Spurs desperately needed a veteran power forward who could stretch the floor while also creating offense whenever defenses collapsed on Victor Wembanyama. Tobias Harris checks every single one of those boxes. At 6'8" and 225 pounds, he knocked down nearly 37% of his three-pointers last season. Having a reliable shooter at power forward forces opposing big men away from the paint, opening driving lanes and giving Wembanyama much more space to dominate. And Harris brings much more than outside shooting. He's a proven three-level scorer who can finish through contact at the rim, knock down mid-range jumpers, create his own shot in isolation, and score with his back to the basket. That gives Mitch Johnson another dependable offensive option whenever defenses throw extra attention at the Spurs' young stars. During Detroit's most recent playoff run, Harris averaged 18.1 points and 7.2 rebounds per game, proving he can still deliver when the pressure is at its highest. But Tobias Harris brings much more than points and shooting. What could matter even more is everything he adds inside the locker room. Harris turns 34 this July, has spent 15 seasons in the NBA, and has experienced countless playoff battles. That's exactly the kind of veteran leadership a young finals team needs. Former coach J.B. Bickerstaff once called him a safety blanket. And over the past 2 seasons, Harris helped Detroit go from a team that won just 14 games to one that finished with 60 victories. That kind of leadership doesn't always show up in the box score. For players like Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, and Victor Wembanyama, having someone with that level of experience around every day could be just as valuable as anything he does during games. Harris also gives the Spurs another strong rebounder, averaging around 5 boards per game while taking some of the physical workload off Wembanyama. Even the structure of his contract says a lot about how San Antonio views his role. The 2-year deal wasn't an accident. The Spurs intentionally stayed away from a long-term contract because they want to keep financial flexibility for Stephon Castle's future extension. Harris wasn't signed to become a long-term franchise cornerstone. He's a bridge piece, someone who raises the team's level right now without creating salary cap problems later. At roughly $15 million per season, San Antonio believes they're getting exactly the veteran presence they need without overpaying. Of course, every move comes with a few questions. At 34 years old, Harris isn't the same explosive athlete he was earlier in his career with Philadelphia. Quicker forwards can sometimes give him trouble defensively, making that end of the floor his biggest concern. Then there's his outside shooting. After hitting nearly 37% of his threes during the regular season, that number dropped to just 30% in the playoffs. If that version of Harris shows up in the postseason again, the floor spacing that makes him so valuable becomes much less effective. There's another challenge waiting for Mitch Johnson as well. The forward rotation is suddenly packed with Tobias Harris, Julian Champagnie, Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, and Carter Bryant all competing for minutes. Harris also hasn't regularly come off the bench since the 2016-17 season, so Johnson will have to carefully balance everyone's roles without disrupting the chemistry that helped carry the Spurs all the way to the NBA Finals. But that's exactly why this signing makes so much sense. San Antonio wasn't looking for another superstar. They were looking for the right veteran, someone who makes the young core even better instead of taking attention away from it. A proven stretch forward with years of playoff experience is about as perfect a fit as they could realistically find. And Harris wasn't the only move that showed where this franchise is heading. On July 2nd, the Spurs hired Billy Donovan as Mitch Johnson's lead assistant after Sean Sweeney left to become Orlando's head coach. In many ways, this decision might say even more about San Antonio's championship ambitions than any player they added. Donovan is a Hall of Famer, a 2-time national champion at Florida, and someone who spent 11 seasons as an NBA head coach. Coaches with a resume like that rarely choose to become assistants again. The fact that Donovan was willing to join Mitch Johnson's staff says a lot about how highly he views what the Spurs are building. During his time in Oklahoma City, he consistently developed young talent while leading the team to the playoffs in all 5 seasons. That's exactly the kind of experience this young Spurs core can learn from. The NBA Finals also showed just how much San Antonio's lack of experience hurt them during the biggest moments. Now Johnson has someone sitting beside him who's coached elimination games, managed superstar personalities, and knows exactly what it takes to survive deep playoff runs. Whether it's the Tobias Harris signing, the Billy Donovan hire, or another move that's still waiting to happen, every decision points in the same direction. The message couldn't be any clearer. The Spurs aren't waiting anymore. This offseason wasn't about making one flashy move. It was about fixing the biggest weakness that stood between them and a championship. They added size, rebounding, and rim protection through the draft, strengthened the rotation with Tobias Harris, brought one of basketball's most respected coaching minds onto the bench, and continue evaluating how De'Aaron Fox fits into the long-term future alongside Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper. Every move has one goal: getting back to the NBA Finals and finishing the job. This is no longer a rebuilding team hoping to compete someday. This is a franchise that expects to fight for championships right now. So now I want to hear from you. If you were running the Spurs, would you keep De'Aaron Fox, or would you explore a trade while his value is still high? And do you think adding Tobias Harris and Billy Donovan is enough to turn San Antonio into next season's favorite? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more Spurs coverage, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.